All right, everyone, welcome. So good to have you with us this evening. So glad to have a bunch of you on here live, and I know a bunch of you will be watching this later. But tonight is going to be extra special because it's not just Dad and myself. We've also got a special guest from our community jumping on with us. So but before I dive into that, updates, Dad and I are still working very hard on version 4. We've almost got a date in mind for when you're going to have that in your hands. We're also mapping out a live event special training for the release of it. So we will update you as soon as we can, but just know that it is coming and we are working every single day to make sure this thing is perfect before we ship it out, because we want to make sure all the bugs are out as we've made adjustments. So enough about that. It is coming in soon and it is looking good. But for right now, guys, tonight is about the journey, the psychology, the learning, the process. And before Dad shares about that, I thought it'd be so cool to bring on one of our students that has been tracking with us for a while. He's become an amazing friend in this journey as well. We met when my wife and I, by absolute chance, I call the guidance of the Lord, booked a beautiful looking Airbnb on the lake in Rotorua. And during our stay there, we met this amazing gentleman and his family while we were there, got chatting, and the rest is history. So a couple years later, we are doing this together, and it has been an absolute joy and a privilege, Danny, to be on this journey with you, my man. So, bro, I'm going to find you, I'm going to pin you, and let's have a chat and get you sharing, because it has been so cool to catch up, along the way as we've been tracking together, pre-Train Force, and obviously now in Train Force, doing it in different ways in the past and doing it this way right now. So many cool lessons along the way, so many good breakthroughs, ups and downs, and I know there's so many nuggets that you can share from your story and your process. And so I'm just going to mute myself, I'll turn myself off and let you rip into it for a few minutes, man, and then we'll pick it up later on. So guys, drop some love and appreciation in the chat for Danny. Let's go.
Hey, thanks, Ty. And thank you, Tim. Man, what an honor and privilege to be on and to be able to share and just be on this journey with you. And I know I spoke to you, was it yesterday or the day before? It's merging in. I think yesterday, Monday. And and I've texted you, Tim, as well. And just really, I'm just feel so privileged and my heart is full of gratitude to be able to, I guess, know and learn from you guys and to be invited into this journey and to really persist to be now where I am and to experience what I'm experiencing. And I was sharing with you just, I guess, the excitement of, to be able to see the fruit now. When did I join in? I joined in with you through what we had before Trend Force, November, I think 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. So that would be, it's coming up to 2 years. Coming up to 2 years. Wow. And early on, and for the first, I think, year or even more than a year, I feel like I was just spectating, dabbling. I wasn't really like getting into it, full on. And I was just busy with other things. And so it was really just a sort of a part-time hobby. I'm trying to like learn things by osmosis and jumping on some trainings, but really just, also getting frustrated, using demo account. Actually, after 3 months, I started using a live account, and I didn't fund it too much. I think I just added a few $100s initially, and just thought I'd play with real money, because I thought, 3 months of fake money, it was just, you don't really feel it. But then when it was real money, there was something like a little bit more tangible. And what did we? It wasn't until so then I started with a little bit of real money, and then I would lose that few hundred, and I would top up a bit more, and lose that and top up a bit more, and but it was, the whole journey was a little bit like, I feel I was hoping that I would figure this out without putting a lot of time and energy and watching the videos that were sort of recommended. And so I think that was some of the learnings initially. I think if I were to do it again, I would follow the, like recommended, videos and teachings from the beginning. So then you're up to speed and you're not trying to guesswork or just pick up nuggets from here and there and trying to, connect the dots in your head. Um, and fast forward, I think until really where things started, the penny dropped. It was around May this year. So that is over a year of following and watching and dabbling. And maybe with this learning, when it's passive, it takes that long. I think if it's active learning, I reckon, like you can shorten that period. So May this year, the penny dropped, and what it dropped with is with gold. Gold started going on a nice big uptrend. And I just figured the whole channel, like trend lines and channel system. And then I just, like put these, I was on a 4 hour chart and drew these channels, and I saw gold, like moving within these channels for like months, from the beginning of the year or beginning of the previous year. And I was like, wow, this is predictable. There's a pattern. I recognize it. And gold was going up and up and up. And I could also then I just watched how, even on the 1 minute chart, like I wasn't needing to wait for a buy signal. I could see the, prices hitting, like the EMAs, EMA 13 or 21. And I could see the MACD, like it sort of like turning. And as it's turning, like we get a green dot. And so I'm like predicting before the signal pops when to start like going in. So between the channels and the pattern recognition of like price dips and goes up, dips and goes up, then I was just like able to just like enter the market, like short wins, like take the profit and then just recycle. And then I was like just super, super excited. And I was like, wow, it's finally like it worked. And so I think I gave you a testimonial of, I started off by the time I had topped up my account, I think I started with about, I mean, I'm converting US to New Zealand, but roughly 8,000 New Zealand, that became 4,000, after my, all the dabbling. And then in May, around May and June, when gold was trending up, I like saw that 4,000 become around 13,000, in, through gold and through this, just this repetitive sort of rhythmic or pattern recognition cycle. And I was excited and I was like, wow, man, like I just thought that was just going to be going like that forever. And one of the things that also got me there, and because also the cycle was, I wasn't really putting stop losses for, the gold, buys, because I was like, the market is trending up. I don't want to be stopped out. I'm going to take short wins. And then what every market happens, it reaches a top, and that was around mid-June. And then what was happening as well is as like price was dropping, I wasn't stopping out for higher purchases. I would just buy at a lower price, and then like it drops again, buy at a lower price, and hope it will just correct and move. Anyway, I found myself in mid-June and like July, and as gold started trending down, I found myself with these positions that I hadn't put a stop loss, that remained open, and then obviously they were going down and down, and there the negative was going higher and higher, and I just found myself now overexposed, over leveraged, and in a position where I'm like, man, this is so risky, so dangerous, and I just can't even like fathom, not only losing sort of the 13K, but then at that time it was like I was funding the account so that I don't lose that, which is anyway very classic, I would say, like, I don't know, gambling behavior, and risky and unwise trading, um, you know, mindset. So yeah, so anyway, I stopped trading, and I was like, I need to like get off this, and really just like get my heart fixed and my mind. And so I stopped trading for the period of between from June, mid-June, when gold hit its peak, to around I think it was July, mid-July. That's when that's when my positions or some of my positions closed on one of my accounts. And then I basically reviewed and changed my tactic and mindset. And so since mid-July, till now. So it's been about 8 weeks, and I've been a lot more strict. Even if a trending, market is popping and going up, I would never overexpose. I'd never not have a stop loss or just hope and be optimistic that the market is going to correct. But what I did find, and so I'll tell you the result. So over the last 2 months, I've been a lot more strict or a lot more disciplined. Um, and it's been amazing. I've just been sort of roughly counting how many trades I've done in 2 months, and it's been over 400 trades. And out of these 400 trades, 80% of them have been successful, profitable. And I've managed to more than double my account, from mid-July to now mid-September, with this strategic, like going for small wins, but a fatter stop loss. So entering obviously at signals, and so they're not all like buy signals. Some of them are again through channel and pattern recognition. I know when it's sort of like coming down, it's about to go up. And so I would enter in these times, but I would have a stop loss and I would have it take profit. And I would take the money and sort of obviously recycle the process. With so what was it? Yeah, so about 400 trades or over 80% were successful. But I guess the different strategy or that what I found worked well because I was getting stopped out with a short stop loss and a higher take profit ratio. I went for an opposite where it was like a 2 to 3 times the stop loss range and like a third or half the take profit. But because they were entries at a good at a pullback, they weren't at like the highest place in the market and in the trend, which was something I would do in the past. And so obviously that's changed. So yeah, that's been really effective. Yeah, what else has been effective? It's the other thing is learning as well to like I love certain sayings have stayed like been like in my mind, like patience equals pips. So then I'm not trying to trade within a time that let's say able, because then if I go, let's say if I'm only available between 7 and 9 p.m., I might try and find trades when they're not really there. So then I was really leaning heavily on alerts. And so I would set, for example, a 15-minute alert on a particular, like product, chart. And so when I know the overall trend for something is going up, the 15-minute alert for a buy signal, for example, will be like, okay, now we're shifting into a buy run. And then I would wait for like the 1 or 2 or 3 minute, signals or alerts, because I know within that 15-minute run, there's going to be multiple, like pullbacks, short pullback and ups. So that was really effective in, again, the pattern awareness or recognition. And, like I don't, you've got the screens that you're trading from, Ty. Everything I trade is like actually my phone. I like don't use my laptop because alerts, I'm on the go on the fly. So it's just I get it. I go onto the chart. I look. I would have already seen and know and been familiar with like where is my channel for that particular product? Is the price within the channel or is it breaking through to give me more confidence? Or if it's gone down outside the channel, then I make my stop losses even closer to that. So I don't wait to go too far down. But yeah, all from my phone, all those 400 plus trades. And yeah, and what else has been really effective? Yeah, I think that would really summarize it. I think if I were to if I were to give tips to new people or people that are frustrated, I hear you and I know how frustrating. And at times I'm just like, man, my monthly fees, which were even more expensive previous to TrendForce, um, like I was like, man, I'm not even getting enough to pay for my monthly fee, let alone to make any profit. But there will be, if you stay persistent and just committed and within the group and even the chats of like how some messages from certain people, I'm like, oh wow, that's something. Like today, Mark, you were asking about entering on doing stop orders or limit orders. And like I've seen similar things in the past, or when people would say, oh, if you're new, starting on gold is really good because it's a little bit more forgiving. And like initially I thought every chart, every product is the same. But then now I definitely know, no, there's some things that are a lot more predictable, smoother. They don't have big like fluctuations and whipsaws. And so, like gold is one of these things. So anyway, when I was saying about you, Mark, asking questions and then like I'm responding, I would learn from people that are like sharing these similar things. And I'd be like, oh, okay, I got to try that. I got to pay attention to maybe this more during this time frame. And so, yeah, another I guess tip that I did learn is I go into a 15-minute time frame, so M15. That's one of my favorites to draw those channels for price to see how price is behaving. And then I also go into if something is trending well, I would go into a 3 minute and then I draw like a more condensed channel to give me an idea of where price is running. And then I would obviously be trading 1, 2, 3 minutes mostly, if I'm doing like short, quicker trades. And yeah, so that's another tip in terms of just the price action, the channels, like seeing where price is in the 15 minute, in the 3 minute. And oh yeah, if you're starting, just watch the recommended videos that like Ty and Tim recommend and say you should do. Definitely start on a demo account. Oh, and the big thing, really the big thing is don't think how much do I want to win from a particular trade. Like don't think what's my going to be my you know, win and aiming for a particular percent or take away money. I would say let the focus be how much are you prepared to risk or lose in a trade. And if you're comfortable with that number, then like be happy. For me, I was just trying to be happy with smaller, like wins, more frequent over time, would be is the strategy that I'm going for because I just figured that, smaller wins are more predictable entering at a good position versus trying to stay in for bigger wins or risking a lot to try and for like to risking a lot for a short, like, I don't know, 10 or 20 or 30 even pips. So most of my wins are actually like more than 30 pips. So like I'm in for about 50, depending on what it is, 50 plus for say average or more most. But they are also smaller wins. So they are like, for me in the realm of, $50 plus minus to say 100. Like I'm super happy with that. I don't try and go for the too high. So I think those are some things that have really worked for me and figured out that, man, okay, I got to be prepared with a deeper stop loss, with smaller wins. I'm always assessing what is my willingness to risk slash to lose, when I'm entering a trade, and those channels, like being familiar with the chart, making sure, say it's trending up or trending down, and then just going in and doing that. The other good thing from that I learned from, you guys, you and your dad, is not being only like benefiting from when markets are going up. And so when I explain that to people, I'm like, oh, like I'm trading, it's good when markets are going up. People understand how you make money. But when you say, man, it doesn't matter, even if market is going down, like I can make money. And that's pretty hard for people to understand. But it's amazing skill to think similar concept if we're trading with the, zone alignment. If zone alignment is all green, then, like big, we've got a big trend up. We can have long, buy positions. If zone alignment is red, like it's great, trend is down, we can have short trades. And so, that was really also great key. So I'm, loving trend force, loving the table, loving the MACD and all the moving averages and the EMA, the 13, the 21, the trend zone, the zone alignment, all these things, they just started making sense, man, nearly a year and a half after, like just being in this sort of process. But man, it's like a language, there's a lot you absorb and you can't speak. You might understand, but there will come a day where like just the penny drops and then you'll find you can think in that language, you can speak in that language, and you can see results. And so yeah, guys, hang in there. Be persistent. And okay, if I can add one other thing around mindset, because this is really good and another key. I come from a Christian background, a faith in God and Jesus. And so um, that I do believe that does make a difference because I think easy come, easy go. If you're if money is there to give you I don't know, like let's say like meaning to your life or to be able to like sometimes like allow you to maybe have negative habits in life. I don't believe the, let's say, the attraction and the ability to hold it and keep it and generate it is there. So there needs to be a heart and mind alignment, which I believe with like God and God's teachings. And so like I'm a big believer in like, man, putting God first. And the way we do that, like you got to tithe. And so because when you tithe, you're saying, God, my significance and my confidence is not in money, but it's in you. And you are the one that gives me the ability to generate it. So, tithing, being generous and giving is also, like over and above. It's also just again a key to unlock, like blessing and provision. Um, and so that's another. And then, the final thing is, yeah, it's like tithing, giving, and I guess, just being, the patience, it's not a get rich overnight scheme. It is a skill to be learned. It takes time, takes patience. And I love what you say, Ty, is that in the trading space, money moves from the impatient to the patient. And so, like if you're patient, if you're going for the small rewards, the small wins, and that you've got a heart that is like, like it's not about me, selfish, like making money a god, but actually putting money in its true place and space that, money serves us as we serve God. Then I do believe then you've got what it takes to, your eyes will be opened. You'll be able to see and recognize patterns and ways and be patient and not be greedy. And like those emotions will come under control because then it's like God is giving the ability to manage these emotions and it's not us by force, by will or we just get swayed side to side, when it's we're trying to control them. We're actually under the influence of them, but when we are under, let's say, God's protection or God's oversight, then like he can give us this self-control to rise above these emotions. Yeah, that's what I'll close with.
Bro, thank you, Danny. Oh man, so much in there. So much. I mean, yeah, I mean, Trendforce, we haven't even been doing this for a year yet. So in this context, very different to what we were doing before, but it's still stacked on top of. But some of those massive key takeaways I heard in there was the level of intentionality you basically gave it, from, trying to pick up bits and pieces and trying to kind of mash different ideas together, to then seeing the process and seeing what works and learning structure. Like, that's what Dad and I love being able to also teach, is overall market structure. The indicator gives us those guardrails, gives us that safety factor of knowing a safe zone to get in and get out of. And a lot of good learnings in there, man, between holding those positions in the midst of no stop losses. I mean, all the emotions that you probably were feeling through that I can, we chatted for a long time about that. And, but overall, then I mean, there was a question in there about, the level of risk and the stop loss versus the reward. I mean, you're only able to have that kind of risk to reward ratio if you have a very high win rate, very high. So you're saying that 80%, that'll work. If your win rate's anywhere under 50%, you can't afford to have a bigger stop loss than your target. You're going to go backwards guaranteed. So little more advanced in that sense with that approach. It's definitely not what I'm recommending to anyone that's new, but 2 years of doing this, figuring out what's working for you, seeing those channels, you figured out your own system and your own play that is working. And so, yeah, man, just want to say a huge thank you for sticking at it, remaining consistent, and sticking around long enough to get the result, right? Learning the skill that you now have, which you can continue to grow with and be generous with it, etc. So, man, thank you so much for giving us your time tonight and sharing and adding value to the whole community. I know there's plenty in there, and that's the beauty of the chat, right? We can all keep going and adding value to each other. I know Mark's keen to see some visuals of your channels and things like that. So, more coming soon. But thanks, bro. Appreciate that. We're gonna keep rolling with the evening, and
Awesome,
guys, drop some love and appreciation in the chat for Danny. All right. Well, guys, the rest of tonight, we are diving into some more mindset training. Dad is ready to rock and roll, so I'm going to hand over to him, and we are going to rip into it. So, Dad, I know you're in here somewhere. I'm going to unpin you. Not unpin you. I'm going to pin you. There we go. Gotcha. Thank you so much for also prepping and preparing what I know is going to be lots of gold nuggets, which are going to follow along with what we've also just heard from Danny. So I'm going to get myself out of the way. Let's rock and roll. Over to you.
Well, thanks, Danny. That was awesome. I just love to hear people's journey, just thank you for your transparency and honesty, that you took your losses, you took it on the chin, but you've learned, you've got up, and you're persevering and becoming a profitable trader, which is awesome. So I think a couple of weeks back, I spoke about psychology, and I want to do a little bit more tonight, just talk more about the trading journey. And so I won't recap from a couple of weeks back, but I just really think, psychology is so important in trading, having the right mindset. I was chatting with my younger son, Michael, earlier. This is what got me thinking about talking more tonight. We often just chat about trading. And we kind of said, why is it that something that looks so simple becomes so hard to master? Especially the rules. We've got 3 rules in Trendforce. And version 4 is going to be even easier. I mean, I was saying to my younger son, Michael, that, if we showed people version 4 and how easy it is, like, we think everyone could get it, but yet not everyone does. And I think we know that. And I keep saying that trading is not just analytical or technical, but it's psychological. Initially, we know when you start, it's learning. You've got to learn the technical stuff until it's part of your subconscious. You got to learn, and there's a lot of learning. But eventually you realize that a good trader, it's in the mind, it's a mindset. And that's why there's a reason why 90% of people lose 90% of their money in 90 days. It's because it's largely the mindset. The other things I've mentioned, they've got no indicator, no strategy, no community, no patience, no discipline, no capital management. But that's why we've developed Trendforce, is to try and reverse those stats. But it's like, only people who haven't got what we've got, only 1% become profitable over a year. That means like 99% of people are losing money. And so that's why it is a journey, it is a journey that's different for every single person. That's why I love, we need to have more people share like Danny shared. I think it's priceless to hear how someone got into trading, their losses, their wins, and their breakthroughs. But it is a journey. And there's no set time, I like to say it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so it takes time to master. I've often said, you wouldn't go to a surgeon who'd only been, been training for a year You wouldn't go to a dentist and he said, look, I've looked at a good few YouTube clips. I think I can do a crown for you. I mean, there's no ways you're going to do that. It takes, you use experience. It takes experience to become, a good trader. But for me, I just think of the vision, financial freedom, the sacrifice we go through, the time, the investment. It really is worth the journey. I mean, what other profession, let's call trading a profession, how many other professions can you choose how long you want to work for? How many hours a day? Most people, they dictate to you, you're working 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day, 9 hours a day. With trading, you can choose. Danny said, between 7 and 9 in the evening, he looks at the charts. He's chosen a time. We can choose how many hours a day we want to work. We can also choose our actual work hours, the start and finish time. You can choose, I'm working 2 hours a day and I work from 5 in the morning till 7 in the morning. And a lot of successful traders, that's what they do. They just work, a few hours a day, and some of them only work 3 days a week. Ty said, and I've said, you only need a few good trades in the week. Once your win rate is up and once you're confident and you increase your lot size, you just need a few good trades a week. I love what Danny said about the 15-minute. On version 4, I've been looking at the 15-minute. There's some very good signals, And I mean, if you just use the alerts, you wait, and our new buy signals and sell signals are way stronger. And we've got different alerts for different levels of strength, which is a hint for what's coming up. But all you need is 1 or 2 15-minute signals a week. You can set your alerts to gold, to the NAS, to the Nikkei, to whatever, the Dow. But anyway, you can choose your start and finish time. You can also choose with trading where you want to work from. That's what I love, You're not bound geographically to any location. As long as there's internet, you can work. And you can also choose how much money to make. I mean, that's the amazing thing. I know some very successful traders, they just work 3 days a week. They've chosen the big lot size. They're not greedy, but they are earning, thousands and thousands of dollars or pounds, whatever currency it is. But that's the great thing about trading. We have a dream, to bring people into financial freedom. But in my chat with Michael, I was thinking, that it's really 4 phases. I just want to mention, over the next half an hour, 25 minutes, that I've broken the trading journey into 4 phases. I think there's distinctive, in my own experience, I think there's distinctly 4 phases that we go through on this journey. And so, I mean, you may ask, how long is each phase? It's like, how long is a piece of string? There's no definite answer. There's so much. It's like, how much time do you give to study it? Obviously, the more you study and you look at the videos and the recommended playlists, that definitely shortens the time. Also, how much time you actually practice. You actually have to get on the charts. I mean, I've said everyone is an expert interpreting a chart that's already played out. You can look back, I would have taken that, left that, but you actually have to practice. It also determines how much you learn from your mistakes. I mean, that is the key. I mean, Danny was so transparent. He learned a big mistake about having no stop loss. That cost him a lot of money. So how much we learn by our mistakes, and also how much we learn from the pain of losses. Maybe Danny also shared that. So it's great. Like what he shared really ties into what I'm saying. Losses are inevitable, but we have to learn. We learn from all of those things. It's not just the academic learning, learning moving averages, learning support and resistance, but it's learning psychologically in our heads, the losses, the pain that we go through. And so phase 1 is the only one I can put a time to, because those are the stats. Phase 1 generally lasts 90 days. That's because we know from studies and research that 90% of people lose 90% of the money in 90 days. So phase 1 is often a 90-day journey. And this is how it starts. And this is how I started, with lots of optimism. I was optimistic when I got into trading. I really thought, how hard can this be, And the thing is, everyone thinks they are an exception to that 90% rule. They think they're one of the 10%. They will learn very, very quickly. And so, it starts with optimism. And of course, where does optimism lead to? It leads to starting with a live account too early. I mean, who's done that? I mean, I was the champion of that. When I think I shared before, I said, come hook me up to a live account. I want to make money. How hard is this? I mean, I started a live account way too early. What does that lead to? Big losses. And that's why the 90%, make losses. And that's where most people give up. They don't have that deep desire to succeed. They've given it a go. This doesn't work. I've lost a lot of money. They had no training, no good education. And so generally that's, people in phase one, eventually when you've lost some money and you started incorrectly, you come to the realization, firstly, trading is not as easy as what it looks. I mean, that's what I learned very quickly. And also you learn you can lose a lot of money very quickly. And also you realize it takes a lot more discipline than any other activity. Yeah, for me, the discipline of trading is more discipline than anything else. I've said before, I prided myself as a disciplined person. I mean, this is a random story, but I've never told anyone this before. My wife maybe knows, but in school we had to do cadets, and there were 250 in the senior class that you dressed up. You got like army uniforms, and out of 250, I won the trophy, this big trophy for the most disciplined and the smartest cadets. I mean, I prided myself in discipline. I won a trophy for it, but I tell you what, trading exposed my lack of discipline. And so in phase one, most people give up because they just haven't done the hard work. They don't have the character. And that's the real key. I've realized this. You come to the realization that your character needs to grow if you're going to be successful in trading. There's a verse in the Bible that says suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. And I just like what Danny said. You can see he's full of hope. He knows he can do it. He's doing it. He's being successful. But look at his journey. He went through suffering. Then he learned to persevere. That strengthened his character, and now he's full of hope, for the future. And so in this first phase, this optimistic phase, where you think it's easy, you end up losing money. A lot of what people learn is perseverance. That is the big thing in that first phase. That either people make a decision to give up and walk away, and that's what 90% do. But the other 10% realize, okay, what I've done doesn't work. I need some kind of better approach. And so for those who are listening tonight and part of our community, I want to say congratulations, because you are part of the 10%. The high probability is you're not part of the 90% that have given up and walked away. If you've stuck with trading for at least a few months, it shows that you have got the perseverance and the character that is needed to go further. And so that's phase one. That's where 90% leave. And then the other 10% move to phase two. And that's where the trading journey really starts in earnest. And that was the hard thing, because you realize what I did after having a paid account. I had to humble myself and go back to demo, because without demo, even Danny mentioned that, without demo, you'll never become profitable. You have to become profitable on demo before you move to a live account. And I tell you what, one of the biggest disciplines it took me was to go from a live account, and I was winning. I had wins, but of course my losses were bigger than my wins, and it was euphoric, I remember once I got up at the open, and I knew nothing, and I just saw this big green candle. I pressed buy. Before I knew it, I had 100 pips, and I went back to sleep. I couldn't sleep from the euphoria. Of course, I lost it the next night, but that's I was winning big, but I was losing big. I had and then it was hard to go when you've won 100 pip trade and you've made like hundreds of dollars. It's hard to go back to demo, but I realized I had to do that. I had to go through the process. And that's the phase two. You're going through the process of discipline, waiting for the right setups. And honestly, I think that's one of the hardest things of trading, of learning, of your training, is the discipline of demo and getting your win rate up. Because you sit there for 2 hours doing nothing, then the setup comes, and you make a mistake and you make a loss, and that was your 2 hours that morning. Then the next morning you come, okay, you wait another 2 hours, signal comes, and you make, you're up 30, you get stopped out for 5. Everyone has to, and it's demo. And so your bank account's not doing anything. But I tell you what, that is a crucial part of the process that you cannot get around, and that's why phase two starts with the discipline of demo, waiting for hours, waiting for the right setups, logging your trades, checking your win rate. And you can't bypass that process. And once you get your win rate up, this is still phase two, then you move to a live account, and then you move to a very small lot size. Don't do what I did, because I've made every mistake. Once I got my discipline right on demo, I put a whack load of money in, up my lot size way beyond my trading ability. That did not end well. All right, so then I had to go back and drop my lot size. I won't go too much down the bunny trail, but you start with a very small lot size. I think I said it before that there's a huge difference, and Danny referenced the two. Great talk, Danny. I keep quoting you. I think you set such a good foundation for what I'm saying. There's a big difference between demo and live. and your lot size will have a huge effect on your psychology. And so when I went a bit all over the place, traded way too high beyond my ability, I went back to the smallest lot size for months and months. And it was frustrating, trading at the lowest 0.1 on the Dow. You win 30 pips, and what have you got? $3, and you've waited 2 hours for that. But I tell you, that is part of the process. That is phase 2, is learning discipline, learning lot size. And I remember, I think at one live event, I talked the difference between, demo and a live account is like going to the firing range. I was in the army for 2 years. We had to do 2 years army training. I love guns. I haven't got one now, in case you think I'm some extremist now. But I mean, I loved rifles. Machine guns in the army. That was great fun. But it was fun at the range. You could take your time. Your drill sergeant would, get you set up, and then you got the thing to fire. You could take your time. But I said the difference between demo and a live account is that with a live account, you got people shooting back at you. And that's a completely different thing. There's a lot more pressure. So in phase 2, with the things I've been saying, I just wrote a few things down. You got to learn the rules and how to follow and apply them. That is key. You got to be clear-minded about the rules. You also got to learn the indicator. And there's a lot to the indicator. I mean, version 4, I know, will be simpler. But you got to really learn the indicator. I love what Danny said again. He's, the moving averages, he's learned it well. Then you got to learn the strategy. We're looking for low risk, high probability entries, that our indicator gives good signals for. We like to trade with trend. You learn that too. And of course, you're always learning patience and discipline. That is the key. You're also learning how to create and follow a capital management strategy. That's really key. Otherwise, your money will just get blown in no time. I mean, I like what Danny said. I did that too. You topped up his account. I mean, you just cannot believe how quickly you can lose money if you don't have a capital management strategy. I remember when I was trading in luck on the average lot size, I made 3 losses. I should have recognized my weakness. And before you know, you've lost hundreds of dollars, just lack of discipline. And so you learn how to follow a capital management strategy. You also learn how to deal with losses. But in phase 2, you're not trading with a big lot size, but you're learning to deal at least with small losses. You're learning price action. And of course, you're learning not to revenge trade. Oh, that is so, I mean, it's a real thing. When I first heard about revenge trading, I thought, I'll never do that. But I tell you, when you've waited, when you haven't learned patience and discipline, you've waited 2 hours for a trade, you think the good one comes, you press buy, and instead of going up, it goes down. You get angry, I'm going to get those pips back. So you press sell because it's gone the other way. And of course, it goes down 10 pips, reverses and goes up, and that's the original target. I mean, that's all part of trading. If you stick to the rules, you can't revenge trade. It's impossible with our trend force strategy and rules to revenge trade because, it'll just, you just don't get signals too close together like that. And so it's learning not to be double-minded, and to stick to the rules. I learned, that even if a trade comes and you don't take it, you're breaking your rules. And it happened to me on Saturday morning. I thought I was packing up for the day, and that 3-minute NAS signal came, and I took one look. I thought, this is going to move. And I kind of almost had packed up, but I thought, if I don't take that, I'm breaking my rules. So I pressed buy 3-minute. Okay, it was only 20 pips. And it did. I mean, it pulled back 80 and then hit the 35 pip TP3 target I had originally. But still, 20 pips is 20 pips. That put a lot of bucks in the pocket for the day. I was happy with that. But it was because I was disciplined with my rules. The trade came, it met the rules. I thought, if I don't take that, I'm breaking my rules. That I knew I would have felt terrible afterwards, thinking that was a good trade and I missed it. And so that's where you got to get to, that it's not just staying out of trades, but it's also taking every trade that fulfills the rules. So that's what you're learning in phase 2. So basically, you're not risking big lot sizes. You shouldn't be losing a lot of money. And so it is that journey. And so really the goal of phase 2 is not to make money, but it's to learn the basics. So in this early phase 2, again, I want to say this, the goal is not to become rich or wealthy or to earn lots of money, but it's learning to stick to the rules, learning the basics. And once you master that, you're making small profits, then you move to phase 3. I'm not going to talk for much longer. I think we're getting into that. Phase 3 is when we really are honing our trading skills and gradually increasing our lot size, but don't increase it too soon. Again, in phase 3, the rules become part of our subconscious. If I see a setup now, and I keep, giving a shout out to version 4, but I don't think what are our rules if a buy comes? I don't think, what are they? TAS, what is T for trend zone? What is angle AS? It's in my subconscious. Now, obviously, I've written I've written the indicator, so I would know anyway, but it should be part of our subconscious. If you see a signal, by the time you get to phase 3, you're increasing your lot size, you shouldn't be thinking like it should be automatically one glance. That's what I love what Danny said. I love the force table. I look at that all the time. And I take one look sometimes. I call it, if it's a Christmas tree with green, red, orange, I just steer clear. I don't even touch it, you know. But you learn one look. You take one look at the charts. You learn to glance at the force table. That gives you a good idea instantly. So it becomes part of your subconscious. You learn to look at the charts and very quickly get a picture of what you're doing. You don't approach trading in the morning thinking, am I going to take a buy? Am I going to go to sell? You should have a bias in your mind based on, the high time frames. Again, Danny, man, you're a star tonight. The way you said, you looked at high time frames, like 15-minute or higher, and then you look for an entry on a lower time frame. That is like good phase 3 and plus trading. And so you're not thinking, I'm just going to go for the first signal. We try that. Trend force is trading with the force of the trend. And so we're learning, to one glance at the charts. And I always like to say, you don't know what you don't know. I know when I first started trading with the early strategies, I looked at a chart, I thought I was seeing 100%. I thought, how hard can this be? I realized I was probably seeing only 10% of what the market was really doing. And it does take a while. It takes experience. It takes looking at, 4-hour charts, one-day charts, learning the bias of the markets. But in phase 3, once you start getting to that, you're learning to make quicker decisions. And also, you're also learning to deal with fear. You can't learn fear in demo, but generally, fear comes through trading with a lot size beyond your ability. So you begin to realize where your lot size is. And for sometimes you may stick at a lot size for a long time. It could be weeks, could be months. But you've got to get confident of losing money to a certain lot size. And that's a real key in phase 3. Say you're trading, let's say you're trading at $5 a pip and you got a 30 pip stop loss, you're going to be comfortable. If it goes the other way, you're going to lose $150. That shouldn't cause you to feel nauseous like I used to feel after my big losses when I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So you learn to be comfortable with your lot size. And if it goes the other way, you don't blink an eyelid. I always like to say every loss is a business expense. But again, if you got a good win rate, 80%, like Danny's got, you will make losses, but of course your profits will be high too. And so you're learning to deal with fear, you're managing your capital. And if you do have a bad run, you learn to decrease it. I mean, that's happened to me. I mentioned I took a few losses once at a high lot size. I thought, okay, the revenge trader I'm trying to get rid of within me, if I keep that lot size, I'm just going to lose more money. I decreased it. And there was a phase, honestly, where I went through a bad patch. I just went down to 0.1. The lowest lot size. I thought I'm going to get my confidence back. Stick to the rules. I was still developing a lot of the rules then, but it did a lot of good to me. Except the one morning, this trade, actually, I think we were doing early days of a live trading. And this perfect setup came on the NAS and I pressed sell. Oh man, 90 pips. It went 90 pips. And then I went to look at my account and I thought there's $9. I forgot to put my lot size back to what I was trading at. So I was expecting hundreds of dollars and there was $9. Anyway, I've done that more than once. It's always good before you trade, check what lot size, Sometimes you save your chart with a lot size and then something goes wrong and it comes back and it's something else. Anyway, I learned through that. I've never done that again. I learned that mistake. I maybe did it more than once. So you're learning capital management. And so basically, in that phase, you're learning all those things. Phase 3, you're growing capital management. You're learning more patience and discipline. You're learning more about price action. I think I've mentioned that. And especially you're learning to handle your emotions. You'll only find out if your emotions are in control with your lot size when you make losses. Because your wins, there will be euphoria. You can't help that. But remember, euphoria is dangerous too. But you learn to handle your exit decisions too. That's the real key, is when to exit a trade. That's whole trading around that. But I always tend to go for targets, and I do trail my stop loss too most of the time. And you learn that. So you're learning all those kind of things in phase 3, dealing with bigger losses, and especially I love what Danny said about patterns. You can't learn patterns overnight. And Danny recognized the pattern, when there was that good bull run, he was drawing channels, looking to see where price was going in those channels. And I learned a lot. It's funny, like this is a random story, but like about a year back, the Christmas holiday period before last, my wife and I did, Tony Robbins, I've never really followed him, but I mean, he's a great positive speaker. He offered a free course, and it was free. Thousands of, maybe hundreds of thousands of people did the course. It was like, 3 2-hour sessions. We were on holiday. We thought, well, maybe we can grow here. And it was great. But he said one thing that I've never forgotten. He said this randomly. He said, it was like talking in the business realm. He said, if you can see any kind of pattern in the marketplace, you will make a lot of money. And I tell you, that just like stuck in my head. And I do, like every day, I make a number of declarations, about 28 actually, every day. And one of them I say is this: I see patterns that make me prosper. And so I believe, that our confession determines the reality we walk in. So I'm always looking for patterns. And especially in trading, you'll notice there are you learn to recognize patterns. Like very often with a Dow and the Nas around 5 o'clock in winter time, there's often a sell that has a good run. We talk often about the 7:30 Express. 7:30 in winter time on the Dow and the Nas is often a big move up that I've caught historically. And you learn to recognize the way the moving averages and the trend zones interact. You learn to see a pattern subconsciously. You just know that it's going to work. And so in phase 3, you're beginning to recognize market patterns, and they become, part of your subconscious. You look at a chart and you know which ones are going to be the good runners. And so, I mean, then finally, when you, in phase 4, let me finish this as we kind of running out of time. I mean, by phase 4, you've really learned the patience and discipline that trading takes. You've learned to manage your capital. You've also grown in your knowledge of price action, and you don't allow losses to derail you. That's the real key. In phase 4, to be profitable, you can't allow losses, to derail you and affect your emotions, because that will always, affect your judgment. So by the time you get to phase 4, you're confident, you've learned the strategy, you understand price action, you understand the bigger picture, and then you really take compound trading to another level. And so compound trading, I mean, the simple formula is that to safely trade, you shouldn't risk more than, 2% of your account. So all you have to do is divide your account by $1,000 all the time. So if you got a $2,000 account, you traded $2 a pip. If you got a $5,000 account, traded 5,000. When it grows to $5,000 account, traded $5 a pip. When it grows to 5,500, traded $5.50. And that's a simple way. You stick to this discipline, don't risk more than 2%. Your losses don't affect you. And that's the real key. And so, I really pray everyone gets to phase 4 really quickly. One of my declarations is, because I take what we're doing very seriously, one of my daily prayers and declarations is that everyone using Trend Force today will only make profitable trades. So, I pray for everyone that's every day in this, not by name, but I pray generally over our community that we would make, really profitable trades. So, I think I'll leave that with you. We'll wrap it up there, and I'll hand back to you.
Oh, thanks, Dad. That was gold. Absolute gold. Where am I? I'm just figuring out all my Zoom things here. So good. And real. Like, that is the thing, guys. We are all on this journey, and depending on when you got started and how intentional you were, Dad's story, Danny's, myself, I love how I was talking about phases tonight. Like, we've had lots of chats about we can't say it's, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year journey. It's phases, and you can compound time. When I got started, I decided this is what I'm doing. I shut off every other non-goal orientated piece of activity that wasn't moving the ball forward on what I knew was my season to be doing. And so I went all in. I was previously getting up super early to do CrossFit, and then we were in lockdowns. And so I was already had the habit, and having 4 kids at home, it was like, the time I have is between 5 a.m. or 4:30, even actually 3:30 when I was doing my early days. I was joining some guys for the New York Open, getting up at crazy hours, putting in 2-3 hours before the kids even woke up. So I was putting in 2-3 hours a day sometimes, while other people were doing 2-3 hours a week. And so the ball is in your court. I would encourage you as well to figure out what healthy boundaries are inside of that, because you don't want to burn yourself out. You don't want your family suddenly hating what you're doing because you're not present with them and you're always staring at a phone. You've got to figure out what works for you. But initially, to gain that initial curve of learning and adopting things, it's pretty healthy to put in a good amount of hours per week to just actually really squeeze the sponge, absorb the information, get through phase 1 as fast as you can, so that you can start to actually practice and get the flow of it. So you actually feel like for instance, when I was an electrician long ago, man, they kept us in the classroom initially a little bit too long. I just needed to get some pliers and some wires and figure out how this actually works. And it's the same thing. We want to get you guys clicking the button so that you can actually feel what it's like to be demo trading as soon as possible. And so I know most of you guys on tonight are already, well past that, and you've been clicking the button for a while. But depending on where you are in the phases, have a good time of reflection and go, where am I right now? Am I in phase 1, 2, or 3? And if you're watching this recording later, I'm going to take all the notes and put them in the video description for what Dad talked about tonight. And so have a good think. Ask yourself, where am I on this journey right now? What is the number one thing I'm going to be working on? Is it patience? Is it having targets? Is it having better risk management? Is it having more disciplined time in my schedule for when I am doing this? My wife and I last night went through a whole nother phase of looking at our calendar in the week and going, where is all our time going? Where are family moments and etc. And where are the times that I'm doing work in this, so that I know I'm doing this then and I'm doing that then, so I can be super present in moments I'm not being distracted. And so I encourage you to do the same thing. Look at your life. What gets measured gets managed. And so whether that's money, whether that's your time, treating your time almost like a budget, you get X amount of hours per week and you get to spend them on your priorities. And so I got to be honest, I always battle a little bit when people with no kids tell me they have no time to learn these skills, because until you have kids, you just don't realize how much time you actually have. But that also then forces you to grow and figure out where the real gaps are and where you can spend them wisely. And so, we're all in different phases of life on this journey. I love it. We've got people that are in their 20s and we've got people that are, getting their gold cards. So it's a whole lot of fun to be doing this together as a community, but we each got to just take that time to reflect, where am I? What phase am I in? What can I work on right now? And be aware of those things day to day, week to week. Remind yourself before each trading session, this is what I want to achieve today. Instead of giving you a list of 10 things like perfect entries and exits and X amount of pips, if it's patience, ask yourself, when is the last time you sat down for a session and didn't even click the button? That is patience. If your rules are not being met to take a signal, are you able to sit on your hands? Figuring out what is that number one thing you want to see growth in for the week, and give yourself something to work on for the week. So you're not trying to knock out 10 things all the time. Figure out what that one weakness is potentially and give yourself opportunity to grow that, and encourage yourself for putting in the hours or the work towards moving that ball forward. Because it is a journey, it is a process, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Love how Dad says that often. And also to Danny, I appreciate what you said in the beginning about me saying the markets are about moving money from the impatient to the patient. No ways I'm taking credit for that. That is Warren Buffett. and it applies big time. Learning patience is everything. I know we all wrestle with that in different measures and different times, but man, parenting will teach you patience, that's for sure. So anyways, guys, we've gone on for a little bit. I think that's us for this evening, and we will wrap it up there. So tonight is Tuesday. We are doing live analysis on Friday. I know we've got interest rate announcements coming in hot during that live session, so it's going to be a big one. So get up early for that if you can. And then we'll let you know as soon as we can about our live event date and version 4 release date. We're working really hard to make it happen, so we'll let you know as soon as we know, but it's coming in soon, guys. So with that, enjoy the rest of your evening. Trade safe. We'll see you in the chat. And thanks again to Danny and Dad. All right, guys. Good night, everyone.